Hey guys, what's up? Today we're going to be painting our brake calipers. Right now, nothing too bad with them, but all we're going to do is just sand them down with some regular sandpaper. Doesn't have to be anything special. We're going to add some primer, around 2 coats, and then we're going to add a color of gold. So this is going to be just the process of me going over the front and rear brake caliper. On the CRF 450X, in order to take off the brake caliper, it needs a 10mm right here to fit right in to these 2 bolts right there. And just like that, once you get the brake caliper unbolted, you just move it around. It's easier to do with 2 hands. And just like that. You want to hold it, don't want to put pressure on the brake line, but this is pretty much it. So I'm going to try to do it without disconnecting the brake line so I don't have to bleed the brakes in the end, but you could always take apart the brake line, but you're going to just have to bleed the brakes once you're putting back together. Alright. Once you finally sanded down the whole brake caliper and taking it apart, just taking out the brake pads, it's very simple. It's just this one bolt here that's holding it in, and the brake pads basically fall out. Now what I did to clean up this whole brake caliper, make sure there's no dust after sanding it down, is I just used some regular brake cleaner, sprayed it down, grabbed the towel. It should dry up, but just make sure it's completely dry. Everything is sanded down to the best of your ability, and after that just tape up all the areas that you don't want spray painted. And once that's done, just hit up with some primer and then go on to the next steps. Alright guys, this is something of what it looks now that I have all the parts that I don't want painted taped up. Alright, it's just pretty simple. It only took about 5 minutes, but now I just want to set some newspapers everywhere, make sure everything is prepped, ready to go, cleaned off, and then we're going to spray some primer. Alright, here we have the whole setup, and we have just regular engine primer. Make sure it's the high temperature one, and you just spray like that. You get different angles, try to get most of the caliper. You're gonna have to flip it over if you're doing it like this though. And that should be a nice good first coat. We'll leave it at that and come back for a second one. Alright guys, right now I've basically done the same process to the rear brake over there. I've disassembled it, started to sand it down, and next thing you do is hit it with brake clean also. Make sure you get all the dust out, and you want to spray at least 2 coats of primer. Make sure everything is, you don't want to do thick coats, but just 1 light coat, and then the second coat should be enough to cover up all the edges. But now I'm just going to hit it up with the gold. They didn't have any caliper paint, but this is wheel paint, and it goes up to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. So it should be more than enough for these brakes. There are no high performance car brakes or anything, so it shouldn't see that much high temperatures, but this paint should last. So for this one, we're gonna add about roughly 3 coats. We'll see how much it ends up being. All right, this is what 1 coat should look like. Nothing too heavy, just trying to get all the areas. There's obviously some spots that you missed, but this is how a first coat should look like. So right now I'm just applying the second coat for the brake calipers. I ended up hitting up a little bit of the back here, and just sprayed a little bit down over there. But yeah, you just basically want to spray it like this. You know, nothing too heavy, you know? Just enough to get all the corners and edges. But that's pretty much how it's supposed to look. The rear brake all taped up, and it's just gonna be the same process all over. Alright, so we're here with the second coat of primer. Here it's pretty much already dry, but obviously there's some places that we missed, and we're just gonna hit those up. Alright, after 2 coats of primer right here for the rear brake, everything seems to be well coated, and now we're just gonna move on to the gold, and it should look like this. Alright, after the quick spray down, this is what everything should look like. And that's just 1 coat, and so far I have done 3 coats on the front brake, and right now I just finished the 3rd one, and it looks a little bit like this. Everything's starting to look pretty good with it. I might just add one more light one just to make sure I get everywhere, and then from there I'll add a clear coat on top to protect the paint. Alright guys, excuse the people cutting the grass in the background, but this is actually what a second coat would look like. For the most part, you should be getting everything at this point. There are some areas I have to still hit up again, but for the most part, you should be getting about everything on near the second coat. Remember, try to spray it lots of times instead of just going one thick coat, because you don't want the paint to be dripping. Once it starts dripping, then it starts to leave a bad, like, you know, it leaves a wet drip. So you want to spray it nice and wide. Alright, so just finished putting back together the brake calipers, and this is right now what they look like. Looks amazing. See it on the other side. Got the brake pads, everything intact already. Here's the rear brake. And I just put everything together and letting the paint cure. After putting 3 coats of gold on, I ended up spraying 1 coat of clear coat on. Just adds the extra shine and also protects the paint. While I was at it, I also ended up painting this chain guard here so it could match and go along with the brake calipers. But definitely changes up the look of the bike. Wanted to go with gold just so it can match these forks here, but that's the end results there.